However you are, on whenever you are, welcome, good souls, to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith. Join us as we traverse the cosmic highway of paranormal portals and tantalizing turnoffs. Tonight, I'm really happy to be bringing to you once again Kathleen Marden, and she has a new book coming out or is out, Forbidden History, and this is a different take, I think, on previous conversations that we've had with Kathleen. Kathleen's book, Forbidden History, A Personal Journey from Alien Abduction to Spiritual Transformation, gets a little bit more personal. And there seems to be, at least in my life, this kind of focus right now on the more spiritual aspects of these paranormal experiences. And Kathleen Marden, with her years of experience and dedicated research, is probably one of the best people out there to examine what it means spiritually, metaphysically, and how the human condition will be affected by what these alleged ETs or consciousness entities are either hiding from us or bringing to us to hopefully make the world a better place, but also for our own personal growth as individuals within this human species that we all hope to preserve for a very long time in the cosmic history. If you are a fan of Paranormal Now and live in New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Connecticut, even if you're a driving distance from Pine Bush, New York, I will be giving a presentation, a lecture at the Pine Bush UFO and Paranormal Museum, April 1st. So that's next Friday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll have coffee, we'll have beverages, we'll have sweets, and it's very parlor-like. And I'll be giving a presentation very much in line with what we're actually going to be talking about tonight. And that's, my examination of why I think we are so invested in the paranormal, why we get obsessed with it, why it draws us in and we can't get out again, but also why it fulfills us and why it is, in a sense, a sort of spiritual journey, not one that necessarily replaces one's personal religion, but actually can supplement it. There's a mythic thread in all of this that I think lives within us and is reflected in these experiences. So hopefully you'll join me next week at the Pine Bush, New York, Pine Bush UFO and Paranormal Museum. And now I'm going to bring on the one and only Kathleen Marden. Hey, Kathleen, welcome.
Thanks, Alan. Great to be with you again.
Thank you. Yeah. You're always one of my favorite guests to have on the show. And there's always a plethora of new knowledge because you are out there constantly researching. And I think what makes a good researcher in these fields is constantly trying to look at things from at a new angle. Did I miss anything? Is there something more to these experiences? So tell us a little bit more about how you got started on this new chapter of your life.
Well, I think that it was about 2011, and I had been a sort of a nuts and bolts UFO investigator for many years, and I was ignoring the paranormal overlay because it was taboo in the UFO field, and I wanted to keep my good reputation. But the evidence became so overwhelming that I felt that if I simply ignored it any longer, I was being scientifically dishonest. And so I very carefully and gently started to mention this paranormal overlay. And in the studies that I was working on, I worked on 3 over a number of years. 2 of them were with academic scientists. And we had questions about paranormal activity. in people's homes. And we discovered that it is extraordinarily prevalent in the homes of experiencers of contact. And when I was young, we had paranormal activity in my childhood home. And
Hmm.
after my aunt and uncle, Betty and Barney Hill, had their experience, they
Yeah.
had paranormal activity as well. In fact, my Aunt Betty wrote a letter and she said, my family and I do not believe in ghosts,
Hmm.
but we believe that ETs are able to be unseen by us. And these things are occurring in our homes, and they've been seen not just by my family, but
Hmm.
also by visitors who were there. And, it brings to mind one time when my father, who was a Boy Scout leader, was having a committee meeting at the house, and the front door opened, the cat walked in, and the door closed. And we were just sort of used to that.
The
And
question is, was it the cat or was it something else?
so that was just one thing. But when I went off to college and I was studying psychology,
Hmm.
uh, I learned in my books and from my professors that it was all perceptual uh, mistakes, that paranormal was not real. It might be people's imaginations, it might be old wives' tales, it might be something else, but just dismiss it. It's not real, folks.
Yeah.
Well, they're wrong, but for a long time, in order to fit in professionally, I denied the things that I experienced. And I came to a
Did
point,
did you suppress them, Kathleen, or did you just deny them?
I attempted to suppress them. I didn't forget about them,
Okay.
but I denied them. I wanted to be the perfect left-brained social scientist. And I went through many, many years of my life as that person. But finally, when I had the results of the studies with about 5,000 experiencers and
Hmm.
realized that conscious orbs inside experiencers' homes are quite prevalent. The majority have seen them. And even more is the sensation that something unseen is walking on the bed. About 75%
That's
reported
high.
that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I said, well, it's time to come clean. It's time to be honest and to let people know that even though the paranormal has been taboo for many
Yeah.
years, most people, even people in the mainstream, have had paranormal activity. Their deceased family members coming back, the scent of the perfume, or the pipe, or whatever that
Hmm.
reminded them of their deceased family member. So I wanted to be honest.
Yeah, I remember one of the first stories I had heard as a child was a friend's mother's mother, his grandmother, had passed away, and short just after the funeral, his mother came home to her bedroom,
Mhm.
and the room suddenly filled with the aroma of roses, which was what her mother's favorite flower was. Now, one could say perhaps that was her brain creating it. However, in conjunction with that, a rocking chair that she used to use started rocking.
Uh-huh.
So statistically, and I'm hung up on like the probability of convergences of effects. Eh, you can't always study this stuff so methodically like you could with typical sciences because it's its own thing.
Mhm.
Especially when you don't know what you're actually studying, it's hard to have controls, right? So to me, when you hear these experiences where two, high strange events occur at the same moment, or you have multiple eyewitnesses, then it gets really difficult to determine, to say, this is fake, this is a manifestation of your imagination. Where for you, are you able to look back at some of these events when you were younger and say, okay, that was my imagination and that was something real?
I can't say that any of it was my imagination. And
Mhm.
sometimes I wasn't there, I was off at college, and the entire family saw a light orb that came in to the room and moved around and tried to enter my brother's body, and he jumped back. But, it's, I can't deny it. I was a college student and I had a boyfriend, and my parents invited him to come on a fishing trip with us over the weekend. Uh, they owned a fishing cabin cruiser they took out on
Mhm.
the ocean. And the night before, he was sleeping in a guest bedroom, and we were awoken in the middle of the night by him yelling and screaming. And my mother went running in to see what was going on, and the coat hangers had lifted out of my brother's closet and had flown across the room and landed on top of my boyfriend. Now, I mean, we all saw those coat hangers. We saw his response. He went out of the house and he did not want to enter again. Uh,
Yeah.
so, yeah, you can't deny that kind of thing.
No, you can't. At now, have you experienced anything in recent years other than those childhood experiences?
The only thing that I've experienced in recent years is after my father passed, and my father lived with me in the late years of his life. Um, and I had a guest house next door to my house. And so
Mhm.
he was there just across the driveway. We had our meals together, and we always had a very close relationship. And after he passed, we had the very strong scent of Old Spice in our living room one afternoon. And, my husband doesn't wear that. We don't have it in the house. Nobody had been in the house, but
Mhm.
there was that very strong scent.
Yeah.
And, I just said, "Hi, Dad. Thanks for coming for a visit." And then when Stanton passed,
Mm.
I had another experience where my husband and I were preparing for bed that night. He was in the bathroom and I was in bed, and we were wide awake. And there in a corner of the room, I saw an orb, and it had a very bright center.
Mhm.
And I heard a voice say to me, "I'm sorry, Kathy." And I said, "Stanton, is that you?" And I received an indication that it was. So, Stanton and I had a deal. We hadn't told anyone about this, but whichever one of us had died first was going to
Mm.
try to visit the other one. And he
Yeah.
was funny. He had a wonderful sense of humor, but he always said, "Well, it should be a lot easier to travel that distance without a body." Because he
Right.
lived up in New Brunswick, Canada, and here I am in Florida. And yes, he showed up. I felt a very strong tingling sensation through my body
Okay.
when he showed up. And it
And
was,
was that so did you verbally recognize him out loud? Or
today I'm not sure if I heard his voice or if it was telepathic,
I see.
but
Okay.
um, it was definitely him.
Yeah.
And he was one who would apologize to me for dying.
That's funny. Yeah, and so was he open to, because when people spoke to Stanton, and and including myself, the couple of times he's been on the show in the past,
Mhm.
uh, it's ufology. And I regret that I never had a chance to really ask him much more beyond that paranormally. Where was he, with the other aspects of paranormal research? I
Well, he said that he would try to come through for a visit. And so, in terms of where he was, I'm
Mhm,
really not sure because Stanton just said the same things over and over for years.
mhm,
There was a part of him, I think, that was closed off to everyone, even to me.
mhm,
Maybe family members knew, but he used to say that the family wasn't interested in UFOs, the
mhm,
paranormal. So um, I can tell you that we were speaking at a conference in Maine several years ago, and a friend of mine was there as well. And the conference lights, and it was at the dinner at night. The lights started to flicker on and off. And my friend said, I wonder if that's the ETs. And what Stan said to him is, well, you're a strange one.
that sounds like something he would say, but
Uh-huh.
I always wondered, was there an aspect to him that, entertained the idea? But he must have, if you, even in a, uh, you know, just sort of way, said that you would contact each other. I think that all of us have a little piece of us, right? That even
Yes.
even the most ardent atheists have a little piece that's like, maybe.
I think that that's correct. And, Stanton would not engage in the kinds of activities that I'm engaging in um,
Mhm,
because Stanton was always under attack by
mhm,
um,
mm,
disinformants who called themselves skeptics. And he called them debunkers, but really they were disinformants in my mind. And he loved to tangle with them and to debate and to write nasty letters and that sort of thing. I'm
mm.
not like that at all. I don't even care what those people think. But
Yeah.
Stanton did. He wanted to argue with them and tell the truth and convince the public that he was the one who was correct. To me, if someone doesn't want to believe this, it's all right with me. People can believe whatever they want to believe. If they want the knowledge, if they want the evidence, it's there. But they can look the other way. I'm not going to force anything on anybody. So there's a difference between Stanton and myself. And I've probed deeper uh,
Yeah.
than he did.
Yeah, and I just received a message. Don't speak for all atheists. Apparently, I'm wrong. There are atheists that have zero doubt. So respect to their philosophy.
Yeah.
And I'm much more of an agnostic. I have those atheistic tendencies. I go back and forth. But then when you have experiences like this, it does change you. Um, someone said to me recently, Kathleen, and this might lead us a little bit more into the work. Forbidden Knowledge, by the way, correction from the top of the show. Forbidden Knowledge is your book. Um, Someone had once told me that they see like an ET consciousness that is like hitching a ride in me to have a human experience. Um, have you heard of that through these close encounters and alien abduction experiences, or are these entities really these other physical beings from elsewhere?
Well, there are many different theories on this. Um, Many people believe that they have had ETs walk into their bodies, or that when they were still in the womb, that an ET consciousness entered that fetus and is living a human life. and they might share a consciousness.
Hmm.
So there are many people who believe that, and in all of the people that I've worked with over the years, um, some people believe that they're hybrids, that
Yeah.
they're biologically part human and part ET. And they were born to human parents and they live on this planet. And many, many people believe that they are here uh, as volunteers on a mission to attempt to save this planet from nuclear war, from environmental collapse. And so many people are coming to know this now when they didn't know it earlier. So I think that the ETs have actually started to uh, give more people information. And so it's less about the physical on craft and more about education of humans. What the ETs told me a few years ago was that um, our technological development is out of sync with our spiritual growth. And when this happens, it threatens all life on a planet, and that they are here to increase human consciousness and spirituality.
They're here to educate us for our own salvation or for their salvation.
Well, it depends on whether you think that they are interdimensionals living on this planet in a different dimension
Hmm.
or not. And I get into that in this book as well. Um, when I talk about Admiral Herbert Knowles and Wilbert Smith, who was a brilliant scientist for the Canadian government and their UFO guy, who is starting in 1954, began a study of messages that were given through a woman named Frances Swan.
Hmm.
And um, I can tell you that she delivered a packet of information to Admiral Knowles, and he was so impressed by the information because it was far above her level of knowledge and education,
Yeah.
scientific information. And he then passed it on to Margaret Chase Smith, who was the US Senator from Maine, and
Okay.
she passed it on to Dwight Eisenhower. And I have a letter from Helen Knowles, Admiral Knowles' wife, that recalled to my Aunt Betty Hill the weekend that the top brass from Washington went up uh, to study, to meet with Mrs. Swan and to meet with the Knowles family.
Sure.
And this, what I discovered is that this study continued. There are FBI records regarding this. The FBI, the CIA, the Air Force, and the Navy were involved in this study. And to answer the question about interdimensional damage,
Hmm.
Mrs. Swan was told that when we explode thermonuclear weapons,
Hmm.
that it tears into the fabric between the dimensions and causes damage out into the universe, is what it was said, but it would be other dimensions. And so they were trying to save themselves as well
Yeah.
as us. And they said that we had a problem with the magnetic fault lines, particularly around Japan. And they were working to rebuild these magnetic fault lines, which I
In
think
the
are the ley
other
lines. I'm sorry,
in
go
the
ahead.
other dimension. No, no, in the other dimension, they're trying to fix it.
I don't know how they were trying to fix it, but
Okay.
actually, Wilbert Smith was able to acquire scientific evidence that they were successful in doing this.
Are ETs right now concerned about the state of humanity? All these years of alleged intervention, is there any sense of encouragement? Like things are maybe getting better for us?
Things are moving forward because more humans realize that they're here and they know what their messages are. In fact, people all over the world have formed CE5 groups to try to
Mhm.
communicate with ET. And people are meditating to try to communicate with ET as
Right.
well. And they're also meditating and praying for more positivity in the collective consciousness
Okay.
to end this hatred, war, aggression, the negative things. And
Right.
those are all messages that the ETs have given us.
All right. We have to go to the first break, but thank you all for joining us. Those so far, please stay with us for the rest of tonight. We have another hour and a half with Kathleen Marden. There's so much to cover. We're just scratching the surface. If you enjoyed this show, Coffee and UFOs, please support this YouTube channel. Please like, subscribe, comment down below. I'd really appreciate all the support and share as well. And of course, for all those coffee lovers out there, the 20% Paranormal Now discount code for Alien Coffee Bean Coffee is mystery, all caps, 20. That's mystery 20. So if you are a coffee fanatic like myself, go to aliencoffeebean.com, enter the promo code, and you get a 20% discount. All right. We will be right back on the inverted upside down.
Hearts race to fight the future. Convinced of efforts to deceive.
This coffee is delicious. Is that a UFO? I'm actually seeing a UFO. This coffee is awesome. That's why they call it Alien Coffee Bean. Is this even made on Earth? Hey all, Paranormal Now will be syndicated on the UnX network, the new mainstream, where you can find your favorite hosts and shows on the cutting edge of ufological and paranormal news and topics. Listen for Paranormal Now rebroadcast on the X at 2 a.m. EST Fridays, 11 p.m. PST Thursdays at unxnetwork.com.
Got my own light, and it is burned bright. Till you took it in the middle of a winter night. My feelings so bright, will not lose light. If you kiss me on the lips and we both glow.
Welcome back to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith, your most grateful host. The music taking us out of the break is by Septembrio. If you are a fan of their music, you can check them out at Septembrio, spelled with a Y.com. I haven't talked to Michael in a while, but last I did, he's working on some new music, so maybe we'll share that soon with you all as well. We're here with Kathleen Marden. This is high strangeness at its best. I feel like this is the culmination of a life's work. Not that you don't have a lot more to do. I know that you will be tackling other topics, Kathleen, but it seems to me you've kind of taken all of these years and books and research, and you're compiling it into this one topic, which, if I may ask, do you think that it's an existential uh, conversation that we should be having?
Yes. Yes, I do. I really do. I think that this really affects the earth and everybody on it.
Mm-hmm.
And we certainly know that there is concern about some of these alleged ETs, but we are told by the benevolent ones that they are keeping the others in check. And so that's important to know as well. So I don't think it's an existential threat, but it's existential knowledge
Uh-huh.
that I think will have a major impact on our planet. And I think for the better.
Mm-hmm. In the early days, the Space Brothers often warned about nuclear weapons and the environment. And every so often, those subjects are recurring in the experiencer reports. Now, the skeptic argument would be that's simply a reflection of our concerns as a society. And so it's maybe some part of the archetypal mind that is conjuring up these experiences so that we can, say to each other, hey, we better stop, or, some other people from outside this place are going to, come in and take control or intervene somehow. Where do you stand with that argument?
The skeptics are just demonstrating their ignorance about UFO history. If you look at UFO history, when we started to detonate atomic weapons above ground, whenever there was an explosion, the UFOs came. And the scientists initially wondered if they were some kind of an artifact of these explosions. So,
The scientists.
yes, the scientists who were working on the bomb, who were watching this, and the military officers as well. So if you know your UFO history, I find that extraordinarily interesting. And then the ETs came in greater numbers than ever before. And then they started picking up people. They were collecting samples, the flora and the fauna, for years and years. All through the 1950s, farmers were seeing them in their fields, collecting plants, collecting various animals from the forest. And I think that they were collecting DNA because there would be a reason for that, sort of like Noah's Ark in a sense, that if we did end up destroying this planet through our behavior, if it was something that they couldn't change through intervention, that they could preserve all of the wonderful things on this planet, maybe to take them elsewhere or maybe to reseed the earth when the time was right. It makes sense to me.
Or it could be the preservation of history in the way that we are, heartbroken if an ancient site is destroyed because of war or conflict, artifacts lost to never be found again. There's a tragedy to that. So perhaps these extraterrestrials, or whether they want to rebuild the Earth-like planet somewhere else or not, at the very least, if they're scientifically minded, if they have a consciousness similar to ours, they probably want to preserve all the wonderful things in this universe, the richness of culture and nature and biology. And this might be an odd question, but in in all the cases, because you've spoken to like well over 1,000 people, um, experiencers, and have researched, you know, all these reports. Do they ever speak in terms of unique knowledge that humans have brought to the table?
No,
No,
not that I can think of.
I was really hoping, Kathleen.
No, not that I can think of. They seem to be more interested in imparting information to
Hmm.
us. You know, they said that many thousands, maybe, I don't know exactly how long, maybe hundreds of thousands of years ago, a very
Hmm.
long time ago, we destroyed this planet. And they said that they won't let it happen again.
I see.
But they
So there's a
don't.
resolve.
Yes, that's from one group of ETs, that they
Mhm.
have this resolve that they do not want this to allow this to happen again. They don't want to intervene in our lives. They know the negative impact that that would have for a technologically advanced society, completely different from us, to come in and
Mhm.
you know, live on this earth, to take control, so to speak. We would all view it as an invasion. They don't want to do that, but
I
they
see.
say that they will if they have to.
So if they intervene, then there is the problem that we all human beings disagree with each other, all the different nations, religions, and so I think there's this imagine this illusion that we create in our minds that if aliens come down, suddenly humans will all unite and agree on what to do. And in this scenario, it sounds like the aliens don't think that that would happen, that by their coming down, they would sort of have to, enforce their rules in order to save us because they don't expect us to be able to do it on our own in worst case scenario.
Well, humans might unite, but against them, but it would be like, you primitive man throwing stones at an atomic bomb.
Sure.
It's their technology is so far advanced from our own that it looks like magic to us. I mean, people have a very difficult time believing that these ETs can pass through solid surfaces and pass a human body through a
Yeah.
solid surface too. Now, I talked to some physicists about this back in 2013, and they told me that it's entirely possible because 99.9% of the atom is empty space. And
Hmm.
everything theoretically has a vibrational frequency. None of us are completely solid, and
Okay.
we phase. And that when you can align frequency and phase, atoms can interpenetrate. We've already done this on a very small scale using neutrinos.
Hmm.
So we know it's possible. We're just not there technologically.
So really, when we're discussing an effect on the other side, when a nuclear bomb is exploded, detonated, that means there's a level of physics that we don't understand yet, right?
In terms of
In terms of it having an
tearing
effect
into,
on it. Yes,
pardon,
exactly.
tearing into different dimensions. Well,
Hmm.
there are definitely physicists who are working on this and have been for a number of years. I know of this. They're working on consciousness too. Um, and some of them even speculate that these ETs might actually be on another planet, but just projecting thoughts and sort of holographic images to us. But maybe for some people, but the experiencers who have been on craft certainly think that it's physical. If they've felt the ET's hands, if they've sensed their their presence, their energy.
But you spoke of a phasing, so perhaps they can change their frequency so that they can feel, you could feel them, but then they change it again and they can move through you. Um, yeah, I remember reading a book years ago about shamans in Hawaii who allegedly had this ability um, to kind of pass through matter. I don't know if it's real or not. I don't even remember the name of the book, but I remember I read that they were going into a meditative state to a point where they can, like, you can move through a wall or something like this. Now, if that's true, maybe it's too sacred that they don't want to share that spiritual technology or whatever. Um, but it seems to me that if other beings could do this, it comes from a place of consciousness. So do you think that human beings, that we could one day achieve that skill?
Oh, absolutely. I think that humans are just not as technologically advanced or spiritually advanced as these ETs who are here to assist in our development or to guide us.
Mhm.
And yes, we'll come along eventually. Um, we're just younger than they are. And back in 1954, they offered the governments around the world, they say, the ability to share their technology. But the condition was that a little bit would be given to every nation, and no nation would ever
Mm.
be able to benefit to the detriment of another nation. And so, coming from a nationalistic world, with a main activity has been tribal warfare forever, uh, we didn't accept that.
It's a double-edged sword, isn't it? Tribalism preserves us and also destroys us at the same time.
Yes.
It's a contradiction of existence.
It is. It really is, isn't it? But, that's
Perhaps you're. Oh, go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say that is the information that I have been given from, a vast um, variety of different people who answered open-ended questions to uh, the experiments that the government did back in 1954 to information that was given to me by the Council of Eight that I speak about in Forbidden Knowledge. So go ahead.
Well, do we need a Captain Picard or a Captain Janeway, like a person of heart, but also of ethics and high morality and intelligent to kind of unite us, um, as a representative to the ET races or what have you? Is it
It's
going to be
really
Kathleen Marden?
it's really difficult for me to answer that question. I know that the Council of Eight claims that they have been attempting to meet with the United Nations.
Okay.
And Kevin Briggs, who is the man that a research team of researchers and I studied looking for scientific evidence for a number of years, has said he's contacted the United Nations, but they weren't interested. And so he's continuing to contact them, hoping
Okay.
that these ETs, and I hope they are ETs, will meet with them. And so, yeah, they would very much appreciate an intelligent, spiritually oriented, respectful
Hmm.
kind of greeting from humans. And, I know a lot of humans don't value that. A lot of humans value brawn, might, uh,
Sure.
just the opposite of spirituality.
Right. Although I would argue that, for me personally,
Mhm,
when I exercise, I feel better psychologically. So
mhm.
it is actually a part of my kind of like quote unquote wellness program. And so I think that sometimes we get caught up in these ideas of like, this works for me and therefore it's good for everybody. Or this works for, me, and you all have to believe this now. And we're a whole being made up of many wonderful parts about being human, this experience. And I think we struggle, of being able to hold more than one idea at a time in our mind. Do you think that you have any ET DNA in you?
Me?
Yeah.
No,
No.
no,
Okay.
I seriously doubt it.
Okay. All right. Disclosure, you think, began in 2017, right?
Mm, I think, yeah. Well, in the New York Times on December 16, 2017, was the article about the ATIP program
Mm-hmm.
and the Tic Tac. So disclosure began then. But if we go back to about 2013, maybe, uh,
Mm-hmm.
on the television shows about UFOs, they stopped putting in a disinformant or to cast doubt on what was said by producing false information.
Like less Richard Doty's, or
Well, I never saw Richard Doty doing that, but there were certain individuals who were on shows all the time. Really don't want to name them because I
of
don't want
course.
to have any kind of encounter with them. But they would come forward and um, they would produce false information to cause
Mm-hmm.
the public to believe that none of this was real. For example, if it was about a ET contact, they would come out and they'd say that it was all sleep paralysis
Yeah.
and talk about shadowy figures and that sort of
Mhm.
thing. We now know from government scientists and from Dr. James Lukatsky from the Defense Intelligence Agency and Colm Kelleher and George Knapp in a new book that they have written, that people who went to the Skinwalker Ranch to do their research
Mm-hmm.
ended up taking home what they call hitchhikers. And they're having experiences in their own homes now.
Yeah.
And they're waking up in the middle of the night with these shadowy figures over their beds that had never been there before. And
Right.
as far as I know, no one is coming forward and saying, oh, it's all sleep paralysis that they're experiencing. That children are saying that they've been kept awake all night by these non-humans.
Right.
So a number of things are happening, including blue solid orbs.
Well, Richard Doty came out, and he said that was my job. I was a, disinformant
Right.
agent.
Yes.
Right. But these other people, you're saying that they're not proclaiming to be any such thing other than presenting what this, misinformation might be as truth, and that's the beginning and the end of it.
Yes.
I
Yes.
see. Okay.
After every UFO show, they would have a person who would come out and refute what the UFO experts
Mm-hmm.
had said in a few lines to dismiss all of it and to misrepresent that person's research and status.
Yeah.
So yes, that used to happen. It stopped happening. And I was
Okay.
wondering for years, I was wondering if we were going to finally have the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And I was delighted in 2017 to have some limited disclosure. And
Yeah.
as time goes on, we're having a little more disclosure.
Yes.
And I'm thrilled about this. And I think that the government is probably keeping its finger on the pulse of the population of the United States. And if
Mm-hmm.
there is public hysteria, they'll pull it back. We won't have that information.
Okay.
But
So
Um,
these are baby steps,
yes.
disclosure,
Hmm.
um, to see how far we can go before the people freak out or not.
Hmm.
And then if we don't, they'll just keep going little by little by little with the. So this is what like Stephen Bassett would call like a drip drip disclosure kind of a. Okay.
Yes, and that's absolutely understandable and
Hmm.
necessary when you're dealing with a human population. You can't just spring something on them that could cause hysteria. They, and it's very important for them to know that they're not going to be abducted. So many people, they see a UFO, they become terrified, they think they're going to be abducted. This is intergenerational. This started quite a long time ago,
Yeah.
and people are taken across generations.
So when we go back and look at the work of John Mack and Bud Hopkins, and then we fast forward to the work of the Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial, I forgot the last E, but free
Encounters,
um, encounters. Thank you.
extraterrestrial and extraordinary encounters. I was
Extraordinary
on
encounters.
that board.
Yes, you were. Yeah, and I have my trusty book with me all the time because so many guests on the show have written a piece in there.
Mhm.
So going back from Mack and Hopkins to now, is there a progression of the representation of the experiencer's um, takeaway, right? So generally, they sort of go back and review their experiences and say, you know what, it was actually a positive thing, and I'm growing because of this. Was that true in the 90s when we were looking at these abduction cases?
There was a lot of fear early on, and people would remember just parts of what happened. And
Mhm.
so often, um, hypnotists were not uh, fully trained on what we know now. And maybe nobody knew this information in that time frame. But what would happen is the ETs would be in the person's environment somewhere, and then the person would be taken to the craft. Well, when you're taken to the craft, you're entering is like an interdimensional portal,
Mhm.
and everyone would start freaking out because they'd feel like they were coming apart. And if the hypnotist didn't know how to handle that, and learn not to do that,
Yeah.
then people would be terrified. They wouldn't be, because nobody back then was talking about moving to another dimension. And back then, it was more focused on is this real? And
Mhm.
okay, what was the experience? Let's see if we can structure this experience. And if somebody's story is a little bit different, then it tells us that they didn't have the experience.
Uh-huh.
Now we know that they're not all the same.
Mhm.
But the focus back then was on um, finding yourself on a table in a craft and what was actually going on. Implants being inserted, uh,
Mhm.
a needle inserted into the navel to remove ova, the removal of sperm, that sort of thing. So things that were done against a person's will.
Mhm.
Uh, People weren't making the decision that they wanted to participate in any of this. People were terrified. If during this terror they're brought out of hypnosis, they're left with that terror, and
Yeah.
they talk about it. And books are written about how horrific this is. But now we've gained a much better understanding of this
Mhm.
through Free's experiencer questionnaire that I worked on with Free,
Mhm.
and through MUFON's ERT experiencer survey. that I also worked on with MUFON and Dr. Don C. Donderi and Dr. Michael Austin Melton and some others. So we have a tremendous amount of knowledge that we didn't have before because of the studies that we've done. Before, it was anecdotal evidence. It was evidence that were information that was extracted through hypnosis. And back then, the people who were working in that field were being accused of leading their witnesses, leading their experience. They called them all abductees in that
Yes.
time frame. So, there was a tremendous amount of criticism and questioning.
Well,
Today,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say they treated it more like one would with like a hypnotherapy. It wasn't a scientific study like you've done as of late. It was these people are having a problem and we're going to learn something about what they experience, but are also here to help them feel better too. So the prime objective wasn't necessarily to collect data to prove, that these were extraterrestrials, right? There was that therapeutic aspect to it as well.
There was a support group. There still are support groups. It's that part of it is therapeutic as well. I host a support group called Awakening Souls for people who have moved beyond fear and are just feeling a calling to reach out to others. And there are other support groups, many of them now, for people who have not progressed to that point in their development. But I think that over time, we've had, as I said, the studies that we've worked on, and also the experiencers have grown older, and they've gained a perspective on this. They have been taken to craft periodically throughout a lifetime. And sometimes they've been taken out of body as well. And now they're being healed. If I have worked with people who have been healed from cancer, healed from heart disease, healed from a number of different illnesses.
That's astounding.
In fact, in MUFON's study, 45% of the abductee group, we had 3 different groups, but 45% of the confirmed abductee group said that they had been healed by the ETs.
And you refer to those who are recovering from that abduction trauma as awakening. Is that a spiritual awakening? What is that?
It is sort of a spiritual awakening. What we found in our studies is that the vast majority, over 90% of experiencers of contact, become more spiritual. They also become psychic or intuitive. They develop the psychic sense of being an empath. And what that means is they can sense another's emotions and feel them in their own bodies, or they can sense the health of another individual's body, and that sort of thing. Many experiencers, not a majority, but I think it was about 35 or 40%, have been able to heal others themselves, to facilitate healing.
That is beyond expectation. We're going to hold it right there. We'll come back on the other side of the second and last break tonight with Kathleen Marden. And when we come back, I'll ask Kathleen how many people she thinks on this planet might have a little bit of ET in them, if there have been these hybrid programs that we've heard about for so long. How long has that been going on? And what does that mean for the human race? This is Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now on the Paranormal Pop YouTube channel, rebroadcast Fridays, 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on the UnX network. I will see you on the Upside Down.
Tell me why, with 12 sides, the odds are that we die, roll the die. As you hide, I can't find you on the other side of the line.
This coffee is delicious. Is that a UFO? I'm actually seeing a UFO. This coffee is awesome. That's why they call it alien coffee bean. Is this even made on Earth? Hey all, Paranormal Now will be syndicated on the UnX network, the new mainstream, where you can find your favorite hosts and shows on the cutting edge of ufological and paranormal news and topics. Listen for Paranormal Now rebroadcast on the X at 2 a.m. EST Fridays, 11 p.m. PST Thursdays at unxnetwork.com.
On and again, the signs keep on coming, they point to the end, but I hold on so tight.
Welcome back to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith. Thank you for joining us tonight. We are on a cosmic ride with guest Kathleen Marden. And if you thought we were hitting high strangeness points so far, we still have an hour yet to go. And your questions will be taken. So if you're in the live YouTube chat, please pose your questions and we'll bring it up and see if Kathleen can answer them for you. And also in the show description, there is the link for the Skype call in line. We haven't gotten this to work yet. So if anybody wants to give it a go, I'd really like to give this a trial. So that link for the Skype call in line is in the show description. All right, we're back with Kathleen Marden. So Kathleen, are we part alien or some of us part alien?
I wish I could answer that question, but I'm not aware of anyone who has conclusively been tested in a scientific laboratory and found not to have human DNA.
Okay.
So I think that we have been altered. I think that many of us have been altered. The ETs have told many experiencers that they're attempting to create a more survivable human, and it's also for their benefit. And if you, pardon me?
Oh, if we're altered, it's just altering our DNA. It's not a splicing of external DNA.
Well, that's my opinion. But they are altering us in other ways, and it doesn't have to include DNA. For example, Kenneth Ring and Christopher Rosing from the University of Connecticut conducted 2 Omega studies on experiencers of ET contact, they call them abductees, and on near-death experiencers. And what they discovered is that near-death experiencers and abductees had the same characteristics. The only difference was that the abductees had a higher level of trauma. And that was pretty understandable because
Sure.
people who were taken to craft experienced trauma,
Yeah.
especially early on.
Yeah. But then they have these repeat experiences, which eventually changes it. So, what do you see a pattern um, for an approach or method that the extraterrestrials are using? Something that you see over and over again that helps the human individual um, grow and reassess these experiences.
I'm not certain where it comes from. I have questioned if we do have near-death experiences when we're taken through solid surfaces, if we're taken into another dimension.
Mhm.
Does that consciousness separate, just connected by a thread to the
Yeah.
human body? Is that why this occurs? Or is it something that happens on the craft? I know for me, for many, many times, I would feel a very strong tingling in my body. And they would, the ETs would be telling me that they were attempting to raise my vibration. And, maybe it was so that I could move through dimensions. I don't know. They never explained to me why, and I never thought to ask why.
What does one think in these moments?
When it was happening, all I could think of is, oh, what are they doing to me? Why am I feeling this tingling all through my body? And
Yeah.
that's when I received the telepathic message that told me what they were
Is it
doing.
Yeah, is that tingling similar to the tingling when you had this experience with Stanton
Yes,
when he
yes,
visited
it
you?
was essentially the same.
Interesting. So, okay, so we assume that consciousness is the sort of the nexus where all these occurrences take place. This high strangeness, the out of body experience, alien abduction. If consciousness is the thing that kind of ties it all together, then I guess that would make sense that it consciousness is almost like a communication tool. So when I'm expressing something to you or when I'm transporting you, if I'm using consciousness, you would have a similar sensation, like tuning into the same kind of station.
I don't have all the answers. I'm still still asking a lot
Working
of
on that
these
one. Yeah.
questions. Yeah, still
Well,
working
because
on these
sure,
kinds of
because
things.
paranormal researchers are always trying to figure out like what am I communicating with and how is the best way to communicate with it. And I guess I wonder if some of their approaches might actually be transferable to communicating with an extraterrestrial.
Well, when I'm in an extraterrestrial environment, we communicate telepathically.
Hmm.
I When I was taking part in the experiment with Kevin Briggs and the Council of Eight, the other researchers and I felt this very strong tingling in our bodies when members of the council came into the room. And let me say, we were able to measure a temperature increase,
Hmm.
significant temperature increase in that part of the room as well when
Okay.
each individual entity came in. There was one that was translucent. We were able to see a little bit, but
Mhm.
with the others, we couldn't see them, but we had a very strong, like electrical tingling
Yeah.
that they were there. And we learned to communicate telepathically with them.
Are there other changes? So, temperature, I don't know, barometric pressure. Are there other environmental uh, changes that occur?
Not that I'm aware of. It's just this electrical tingling
Okay.
and an increase in heat. And in fact, when they spoke through Kevin, he
Hmm.
he was just drenched
Yeah.
afterwards.
His
And
body was overheating.
yes, yes, his clothing was just soaked with perspiration. The
That,
perspiration was running off his face.
yeah, that makes me think of Tyler Henry, the psychic medium. Often when he's doing readings, he'll
Mhm.
start dripping like sweat. You could see it coming down. Uh,
Mm.
so, but you haven't experienced that yourself to that extreme?
No, not that heat in the body. Uh,
Hmm.
I was I was being as scientific as possible and also very cautious because I didn't know if these entities were ETs or if they were positive or negative. I wasn't sure what I was working with. So for a very long time, I simply didn't trust them well enough to say, come and talk to me, something like that. But
Sure.
one did uh, early on during our meetings. We would meet once a month,
Hmm.
and the other researchers and I were able to bring a question or two to each meeting and ask that question. And the ET would answer the question very specifically. In
Okay.
fact, in my book, Forbidden Knowledge, I have 120 of the questions that we asked and their answers to those questions. So um, initially, after we met them, uh, a little gray scientist named Zark, and I know
Mm.
people always say ETs don't have names, that's something else, but I can assure you that I'm not delusional and Kevin wasn't delusional and the other researchers are not delusional.
Right. Yeah.
That's been established. And in fact, one of the researchers we had with us is a psychotherapist, Dr. Melanie Barton Bragg,
Hmm.
and and we we did communicate. They showed us craft, started with Melanie, then Denise. For me, I wanted to see that craft close up and over
Yeah.
my lake. I felt a very strong presence from Zark. He spoke to me telepathically. And there was a whirling circle of water, probably 35 to 40 feet in diameter on the lake. I was wondering if a craft was going to lift up out of the lake, but that didn't happen.
Hmm.
So those sorts of things happened. They showed me light orbs just bobbing along my lawn, three of them
Yeah.
outside at night. Um, when they wanted to show me a craft, there was a red orange orb that was coming in closer and closer. And then all of a sudden there was like an explosion and it dispersed.
I remember you telling me a story in the past about your family driving to the lake. Is that this the same occurrence? No.
No, I live
Okay.
on the lake
Okay.
now,
Okay.
but the story I told about my family
Hmm.
was it took place in 1966,
Right. Right.
February of 1966, when several of us followed a UFO. A friend of mine had reported it as she was walking home
Hmm.
and found it. We went down to the lake, went out onto the ice, and the craft was hovering over the ice. And went to another part of the lake, projected a kind of one of those beams on my mother. I don't know for certain if it hit her. I think it did, but it came toward her in a measured way, not like turning a light on.
Right. I remember you describing that. Like, it came
Mhm.
down almost like if it was something of material, but it wasn't. It was like a contained light that
Mhm.
approached her, which is really fascinating. With all these experiences that you've studied, is that something that you've heard before? That kind of measured approach of a light or a beam?
I've heard it from a few people.
Okay.
The beam itself, yes, many, many people. In fact, I have video in a very big case that I investigated, and of ETs, of non-humans,
Mm.
and that purple beam, well, it's indigo colored beam that came out. I have one slide. I did a frame by frame analysis on this. One slide that shows the beam and an entity that appears to be popping out of that beam. It's not entirely solid. It looks female, and then you can see it as it becomes solid as it moves closer to the ground. And it seems that they are very small when they come off and they grow larger. That's the way it seemed to me. I can't say that for certain. We had only a few seconds of this video, and there were 4 different entities that I was
Okay.
able to study.
All right. We have a comment from Jesus that I want to bring up here. My experiences with ETs used to terrify me because I didn't have any control. My last experience was June 23rd of last year. They healed my facial fractures with a gel-like tablet, that fractures that he received from an accident.
Mhm. Yeah, that's wonderful. And I've heard of others who have had gel put on various areas of their body for healing.
Interesting.
Mhm.
So it sounds like this is now, when these healing events happen, are these the same beings, the same race, if you will?
A lot of times it is. Mhm.
Okay. So it, like you said earlier, there's one race that seems to be interested in helping us. So is
Oh,
that
there's
the
more than
same?
one.
Oh, there's more than one. Okay.
Yes.
Well, that's good. That's good to know. Whew. Yeah, because I would imagine there's a multitude of consciousness, sentient beings out there.
Mhm.
Um, do you have any sense at all of the ratio of you know good to bad?
Well, in our study, uh, the MUFON study, we asked the the individual's response to these entities, and less than 6% said they thought they were evil. About
Hmm.
10% said that they uh, were not friendly. Let's put it that way. I don't remember the precise wording. I don't have it in front of me. And it was about 20% who said that they were highly benevolent. And all of the others said, well, it depended upon the entity. They were more businesslike than anything.
Hmm. Interesting. Business-like. Okay.
Yes.
That brings up the question of what kind of consciousness are we dealing with here, right? So if we go into the wild and we abduct sea turtles to tag them, to put them back, we can't explain to the sea turtle, hey, this is what we're doing. I know this is terrible, but I promise you this is good for you and the species. Is it that big of a gap, an intelligence gap, do you think, where we just, what we consider as being traumatic, or just some people call evil, what they're doing to human beings, is it just that we can't comprehend their intention?
I think so. That's what I think, um, for the most part. There are some that care little about humans, a small percentage.
And should we
Um,
be worried about those?
well, we need to help the people who have attachments from this small percentage. And
Okay.
I have a couple of articles that I've written on my website at kathleen-marden.com under essays on contact. And you can go there and get information about this and about how to remove these negative entities that attach to people, because it's become a real problem.
I always kind of felt that one state of mind can keep away these negative entities, whether it's you're going into a haunted house or it's some other consciousness that is just strange and we don't know what it is, but it's entering our sphere of reality. I think that our state of mind alone can keep something away. That's just something I believe. I can't say that I know it to be true. Um, when you're employing these methods, are those methods just a way of kind of honing the mind to get into a state where the mind itself is what's keeping away these negative entities?
Well, you have to raise the vibration, which is actually the mood, to
Mm.
have a more focus on love,
Uh,
focus on benevolence, that sort of thing. But I can tell you that that's the kind of focus that I've had for quite a while now. And even though I had that, I was trying to help a man who was having these horrible experiences with draconian reptilians who were doing just awful things to
okay.
him. And I was trying to determine if this was like demonic, like the Bible would say demonic,
Hmm.
or if this was extraterrestrial, or what precisely it was. I knew it wasn't mental illness for this particular man.
Yeah.
And he told me something that was so horrific. It just lowered my mood for a moment.
Hmm.
And this reptilian attachment came in. It just attached me. I could feel, first of all, the tingling sensation that I get in my body
Hmm.
just flowed out. And it was replaced by what seemed like a dark cloud over me. Now, I had never had difficulty falling asleep,
Okay.
but that night and for the next couple of months, I was having problems falling asleep. And my body started to ache. I started to experience pain. And as I've studied about these entities, they feed off pain. They make people ill. They feed off fear, off loathing. They are particularly attracted to people who have major depressive disorder, people who are alcoholics, people who are addicted to opioids, that sort of thing. People, they feed on that pain. And uh, this thing, I tried to get rid of it with religion, crucifixes, with holy water, holy oil, with crosses on my doorways, with everything that I could think of. Now, I
Hmm.
have a friend who is a minister, but she lives 3 hours away from me. And so she tried to do a distance healing, a removal of the entity. And she couldn't from a distance. So she told me that in 2 weeks she was going to drive down and do it for me. But that entity spoke to me and told me to kill myself. And
Oh,
I know that I've never had that thought before.
yeah, yeah.
And all of a sudden, I panicked and I said, this has to end now. Now, I talked about Kevin Briggs and the Council of Eight and the
Mhm.
research project we did. The Council of Eight said that they would protect us. In fact, I haven't been taken to craft since I started working with the Council of Eight. And so
Oh,
I called
interesting.
Kevin up and I said, Kevin, this is what just happened to me. I
Yeah.
need help. Please ask the council. to help me. And he said, okay, Kathy, I will. And that very night, it was gone. They removed it. And I was just back to being my happy
Okay.
tingling self again, which made me very, very happy, but also taught me that I, being an empath, cannot be in the presence or be hearing the horrific stories from these people. And, you know, a lot of these people want to send me information, and I'm sorry, but I don't want to expose myself to something that is so dangerous to me.
But isn't that almost impossible considering the work that you do?
Well, I can refer them to people who can work with them.
Okay.
And
So
on my
you have to be.
website,
Mhm.
I teach them how to raise their vibration. If
Okay.
you keep that vibration high, and it takes work, it's not easy. If you do it through listening to vibration raising music and through certain guided meditations, you can get rid of that, because it is not going to remain with you if it's not being able to feed from those negative emotions.
I have a comment from Alexi, like altogether, and that's why they abduct people to further their research. Are they researching us?
Oh, I'm sure that they are.
Are we just an experiment for them?
Some people think so. Um, I don't know. I don't have an answer to that question, but some people think that we're an experiment. Some people think they planted our seed here, and they come back from time to time to guide us, to check up on us. I know for me, they told me early on when I was 17 years old, when I was taken with my mother to craft when my Aunt Betty was doing contact experiments with a team of scientists and trying to have one land on my grandparents' farm. And it did come in, and it took my mother and myself. There were two witnesses to the craft. They told me that they had to take tissue samples from my body to check for levels of toxicity, environmental toxicity. There's always been a concern, so maybe that's my purpose. I've never seen a hybrid on craft that I recall. Now, I haven't had that much hypnosis. A lot of this, what I know, is just from my conscious recall. But it made sense to me later, not when I was 17, but I grew up just downhill and maybe a half mile away from what became a super fun site. It was a barrel factory where they would take in barrels filled with chemicals, and they'd wash them out and they'd burn them out. In fact, my mother would make us stay in the house when they were burning because of the toxic fumes that were just wafting down over my neighborhood. And and when I went back there as an adult with my children, I discovered that every child born on that street had a learning disability or attention deficit disorder. Every one of them had some kind of learning problem. And I know there were neurotoxins. They said that it didn't go into the well water. I think it did. It went into the stream. It went into the lake.
I mean, look, even where we live, people, because there's well water in areas around us, people are careful about what they put on their lawn. Just Roundup, right? So if just every day over the counter, products that we can buy, people are concerned about getting into their wells. I think that a super fun cleanup kind of a chemical spill or whatever occurred there could certainly and most certainly did get into the groundwater. It's To deny that is just disingenuine. We have a comment here from Aaron Tyson. He says, ET abductions are inhumane and are psychologically terrifying for the individual. There has to be another way for the ET agenda to continue without terrorizing people.
Yes, I wonder if he is an experiencer who's felt terrorized by this. I know I was early on. And, you know, I would think there has to be another way, but what other way is there? I think that eventually they learned the impact that they were having on us, and you know they've tried to change it. They're not taking most people to craft any longer. They're communicating in another way. But yes, and the ones who care less about humans are even worse. People have just horrific experiences in their presence, like what I was just speaking about, when that give negative attachments.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know if the ETs have another way. I don't know if they are doing their reproductive procedures any longer, that sort of thing.
Aaron Tyson says that his mother actually passed away from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma due to Roundup. I'm so sorry, Aaron.
Yes. Yeah, that's really unfortunate. And I know that Roundup has been named as a chemical that can cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in people.
Well, isn't that the sort of thing? Yeah, isn't that the sort of thing that because people always say that UFOs will come down, they'll stop the nuclear war from happening, they'll intercede. But we have all these spills and what have you. Where's the intervention there? What don't they want to come in and help keep this planet clean? Oil spills, chemical spills.
I think that only if we are to have a threat of nuclear war, for example, where the weapon has already been fired, that they would intervene. As I said earlier, they are concerned about the impact that it would have on the inhabitants of this planet if they were to come in. They're so different than us. They don't use their mouths to speak. Communication is telepathic. Only some of them look like us. A lot of the others look pretty frightening. If you meet a gray face to face, or you meet particularly a mantis face to face, a lot of people just have a highly negative and kind of terrified reaction to being in that kind of presence. In fact, the mantis types are now generally wearing masks and covering themselves with long capes to cover their bodies.
Earlier on in abduction cases, we heard a lot about like skin tight covering of clothing from head to toe. Was that part of that masking to reduce our, fear-induced reactions?
Maybe from the Greys, I heard a lot of that, where it appeared that they wore like a full body suit.
This Council of Eight that you were mentioning, who are they, and how do they get to be the arbiters of this sacred information? I mean, if they were able to help you somehow with an attached entity, they have a connection to something quite powerful, it seems. So can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
I can. When Kevin Briggs was a boy growing up in England, at the age of 8, he was in the bathtub and these two very large human-looking entities materialized in front of him, a man and a woman. And he was terrified, and then they left. And a year later, when he was 9, one of them came back and told him that he was his father, and that he was going to teach him how to astral travel. And Kevin saw this entity as an orb for a week. He stayed with him and communicated with him. And then over the years, he took him on these voyages, these journeys, where initially he would go to the homes of relatives and just be able to be like an orb himself in their presence.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And I say that because the other one, the ET, is named Ort. And Kevin said to him, when Kevin was seeing the orb, he said to Ort, what do I look like to you? And Ort said, a ball of light. And so, this is probably at the membrane between the dimensions, I think.
Yeah.
Where
That's how we
us.
perceive each other.
Yeah, and we see them as that. So just that conscious energy, maybe. So then Kevin grew up. He became a police officer in the UK, and eventually he got married to a woman who taught at a university there. And they, after many years of marriage, decided to move to the United States and become citizens. And they did. And two of my colleagues met him at the MUFON Symposium in Orlando in 2016, and then introduced me to him. I was there, but I was the lecturer and had a vendor table, so I didn't meet him then. Eventually met him, talked to him over time before it led to these meetings. But Kevin is the one who, when he was 15 years old, when he was a paper boy, delivering papers one morning, there was a craft hovering over one of the parks in his town that he passed by, and he was taken to craft then. In fact, I did hypnosis with him. And this was the first time he met the Council of Eight. So who are the Council of Eight? They are a group of extraterrestrials who say that they're part of this intergalactic federation. It's not just their group, but they are doing their part. That they are here to as protectors of this quadrant of our galaxy. And they are Ort and Dee, who are the two. They say they're Arcturians, two very tall humans.
The Arcturians, like the blue color?
Well, these aren't blue.
They're not blue. Okay.
No. But they say they're Arcturians. So maybe there's more. That's how they're identifying themselves.
I see.
I did have questions along the way because I couldn't see them. And who were they really? I always wondered.
Good point. Yeah.
And then two grays. One was Zark, the scientist who came to my presence, who communicated telepathically with me, and who still comes from time to time. Then there was a tall gray, Targ, also. Then there was a tall white, a blue avian, female.
Okay.
And a mantis type, Chica, who I've met Chica too, and liked him. I thought he was a jolly fellow. I only saw his face. I didn't see his entire body.
And you see this in your mind's eye, or?
It was during a group meditation.
Right. Okay.
That I saw him. in, and he just came flashing in, and I that doesn't happen normally when I meditate.
Yeah.
So
But I
that
mean, was
um,
it were you meditating with your eyes closed and you saw, or were your eyes kind of
no, I
open?
did not see him in my physical environment. My
I
eyes
see.
were closed. And then there are two ninth dimensionals. They say the Council of Eight, but one is Ra, who is not the Egyptian sun god, and the
Mhm.
other is Shiva, who is not the Indian god. Shiva is female, Ra is male. They say that at one time they had physical bodies, but they have kind of ascended to
Mhm.
where they are now, and they haven't had a physical body for thousands of years.
Okay.
But they have the most powerful tingling in our bodies, in their much energy in their presence. Uh, Ra says that Shiva is his left side. And so I don't know if that means that they are together or
I see.
what it is, or if she is
Was
just to
yeah.
the left of him.
I was
But
gonna ask.
she is a healer. She has healed people in the group who have asked for healing.
Specifically, and I want to bring that up. Let's talk about the healing for a second too, because that seems like something you could potentially measure. So let's say somebody is injured, something's wrong physiologically. The doctors are aware of this. You know, they've been to the hospital or they had a checkup with the doctor. There's been some analysis, and then suddenly, you know, one day or a week later, they come into the doctor and they're like, "Hey, I'm good."
Mhm.
Uh, what do the doctors say, and how do you even prove, you know, that it was an alien induced healing?
A lot of people don't want to tell the doctors that the ATs came to visit me and I'm better
Yeah,
now. And, the doctor would just scratch his head or her head and
yeah.
say, oh, kind of a, um, spontaneous remission.
Hmm. Right. Okay. And so that in itself is what's supposed to be a placebo effect from the
Oh,
doctor's
yeah, but
point.
it's not. That's the only way that a left-brained scientist could explain it, because they wouldn't want to even approach the idea that this is some kind of higher entity doing this healing. I worked, if you don't mind me saying so, uh, in one of the large cases that I worked on, there was a man from Canada, and I worked with him over many years, and he developed cancer. He had lymphoma. I had the medical record. Some I asked him to send his medical records to a medical doctor that I was working
Mhm.
with, and he did. Well, what happened is that I said to this man, and his name is Jim Schaefer. He let me use his name. He's
Mhm.
now deceased. But when we were going through that, he didn't die of cancer, by the way. Um, his neck was huge. He was set up to have surgery. And he actually caught on video an orb sliding down his wall, flying across the room like a butterfly,
Mhm.
hovering over his body, putting down iridescent tendrils, like, kind of like, yeah, like that,
Yeah, yeah.
over
Mhm.
his body. It dove down into his body. He fell asleep for 12 hours, and when he woke up, the nodes in his neck were no longer visible. When he went in for surgery, they
Mhm.
removed 4 tiny necrotic nodes, no cancer, and the nodes had died.
That's amazing. What are people saying now that you are coming out and sharing these very more exotic stories and aspects of your experience and your research? Um, is it are people saying, "Hey, Kathleen, like, come on, we need you to be a little more conservative," or are people embracing it?
people are embracing it. I've
Good.
had a more enthusiastic response to forbidden knowledge than I've had in any of my other books. It quickly rose to #1 in new UFO books on
Amazing.
Amazon. And so there's been an overwhelming outpouring of people who want consultations with me, of people who are writing to me.
Mhm.
Um, it's just been an overwhelming response from everyone that I've done an interview with,
Yeah.
even those that I was worried about, who I thought, I wonder if they're even going to accept this, have
Yeah.
been enthusiastic about it.
That's so great to hear. Um, the Council of Eight, if somebody wants to communicate with them, so we have the CE5, right? Can people on their own communicate with these beings?
I don't know if they can on their own, and I would warn anybody, uh, don't attempt it unless you're with someone who can do it safely, and they're going to lead this uh, CE5 or meditation or whatever it is, and make
Yeah.
sure that you are protected so that no negative entity will slip in.
So, what is their relationship? Is there a relationship between them and the U.S. government or governments of the world?
As far as I know, the governments of the world are not yet interested in meeting them or cooperating with them. They
Hmm.
know that they're present, I've been told. You
Okay. There's
know,
an awareness there.
that yes, they say there's an awareness there, but not the will to cooperate.
Okay. So, how does that play into or connect to the government's seemingly, slow disclosure, soft disclosure, if you will, that we're seeing now? Are Has the Council of Eight had an impact or influence where our government is now?
I don't know. I don't know if they have. No, I do know that in the OSAP program,
Hmm.
the early program at the Skinwalker Ranch, they really made a serious attempt to study this, because
Yeah.
here you have, in one instance, evil that has been weaponized
Right.
by these shamans who uh, just were having a problem with invasions from other groups. And I know that there are other places uh, in the United States where that evil has been weaponized to pieces of land.
Right.
So I'm pleased to see that government scientists and people in the military are studying all of this. I certainly hope that they don't try to weaponize any of it.
Okay.
That is a huge concern to me, because I had mothers of soldiers who were returning from the war in the Middle East,
Hmm.
who believed that their sons were now being abducted by aliens, and it was all evil. Evil. I think that it's been the weaponization of evil uh, that has attached to some of our soldiers.
Well, I guess it's a wonder if these experiences are caused by some sort of evil entity or what have you. How do you weaponize an entity or a consciousness? I should hope that it's like trying to grab onto flowing water, and that our government will never be able to make use of whatever that energy is. That's me being optimistic. What do you think? Because if these energies or entities are sentient, can we really weaponize whatever they are?
Well, sort of asked that question to the
Mhm.
Council of Eight,
Hmm.
and the answer that I received is that the human mind is capable of creating, how I wish I had it in front of me, sort of creating an evil entity. That
Okay.
human thought can create this kind of thing. It's sort of the idea that I have, in a sense, of putting love into the collective consciousness to overcome evil.
I see.
Because if evil is in the collective consciousness, then we have more of this negativity on our planet, and more problems with these negative attachments, whether they're demonic or negative reptilians, whatever they are. The paranormal clergy is busier than ever. There's been a huge increase in this.
So you're saying love is the answer.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. It's the opposite of evil. Love, kindness.
Yeah. Are they, the Council of Eight, sharing that message?
Yes,
Okay.
they are. And in the book, you'll read a huge variety of questions
Mhm.
and their answers, specific answers to those questions. But yeah, I think they feel to us, in our feelings, that they are kind. We did not feel any negativity, any evil from any of them. They
Okay.
all seem kind and gentle and concerned.
And for everyone listening, the name of Kathleen's new book is Forbidden Knowledge, a personal journey from alien abduction to spiritual transformation. And you can go to kathleen-marden.com to get her book. Kathleen, I have to ask you before we go, do you watch movies, science fiction movies about aliens or extraterrestrials?
No, I don't.
No.
In fact, I did watch the UFO incident, the movie that was made about my aunt and uncle, and
Okay.
I watched Fire in the Sky. But
Right.
I've never really enjoyed science fiction or that kind of movie.
Yeah.
So no, I don't watch that. I like history.
Hmm.
So, if I'm going to watch a movie, I like something that's sort of historically semi-factual,
Okay.
at least.
Well, if I might make a suggestion, in one of my wife's favorite movies, and I share that with her now after rewatching Arrival, the new Arrival, not the one that came out in the '90s. Um, it's called Arrival. It is intelligent. It's very smart. It's not. There's almost no action.
Mhm.
And it's about connecting with and communicating with these alien race. And I thought that's something that's sophisticated, um, and that you would appreciate it because it's also very, very human at the heart of it
Mhm.
as well.
Well, I'm
And that's
going
for
to look
everybody
for
listening
that.
tonight. Okay. Yeah, we just watched it last night, and I was like, man, what a great film this is. So I wanted to share that with you and the world. So, Kathleen, thank you so much. If you can leave us with one thought tonight, what is it?
Oh, just learn to project love into the environment, to the animals, to the plants.
Mm.
It has been demonstrated scientifically that it does have an impact. And so that's my message. And aside from that, go to my website. You can see where I'm going to be speaking this year. There are links to the different conferences. You can purchase autographed copies of my books there. So thank you
Yes.
so much.
Finally in person again. That's so great. Um, I remember the first time that I had met you, I think it was 2018 or 2017. I'm not sure. It was in Cherry Hill, New Jersey at a MUFON conference. And
Yes.
you were right down the row from Travis Walton.
Yeah, I remember
Uh,
that. Mhm.
you do? Oh,
I
okay. Yeah.
remember meeting you there. Yes.
Oh, wow. Thank you. That means a lot because,
Yeah.
I know you see so many people at these events. And for me, that was a really special moment to met you and Travis, within minutes of each
Yeah.
other. So very cool. So Kathleen, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Well, it was great speaking with you again. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you all for joining us tonight. This is Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now, streaming on the Paranormal Pop YouTube channel, rebroadcast on the UnX network, 2 a.m. on Fridays. And of course, if you live in the tri-state area, New York area, particularly Orange County, and you want to see a conversation and a lecture on the mysticism, the importance of the paranormal, and why I think it's a spiritual endeavor for all of us, please join me next Friday, April 1st, at the Pine Bush UFO and Paranormal Museum at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I hope that I will see you there. We'll have coffee, drinks, a little chat and food and parlor style. And I will also be sharing a segment, exclusive preview of the Half-Light documentary that I'm releasing later this month. So peace and love to you all. Thank you so much. If you appreciate this show and all the shows on this channel, please like, subscribe, and comment down below. And until next time, live in the mystery.